Thank you for participating in our study. To create the model of the inguinal canal, you will require the following materials and tools. So firstly, let's start with a tracing paper. Along the left length of the tracing paper, we're going to make 4 markings. From the base to point A, we want 7.5 centimeters. From point A to point B, we want another 7.5 centimeters. From point B to point C, we need 4.5 centimeters. And from point C to point D, we want 9 centimeters. The paper should look like this, and now we want to make 4 downwards folds on each of the points. As seen here, fold once, fold twice, make sure the folds are nice and flat, fold a third time, and make the 4th and final fold at point D. Make it nice and flat. The paper should look something like this. At 3.5 centimeters above point A, make a marking and label it as A1. Next, at 5 centimeters to the right of point A, label it A2 and create another marking. And 2 cm below A2, you want to create another marking and label it A3. Carefully draw a quadrant, joining the 3 points together, as seen in the video. Next, we're going to make a marking 2.5 centimeters above point A and label it as A4. Make another one 4 centimeters to the right of point A and label it A5. And we're going to do 2 centimeters below A5, make another marking, and label it A6. Similarly to before, draw another smaller quadrant and join these 3 points together. We want to label the resulting space between the 2 quadrants as the pubic arch. From the outer quadrant and along the fold on point A, draw 2 parallel lines. They should be spaced out 0.5 centimeters between each other, as seen here. Once it's done, label this as the inguinal ligament. Now, we're going to be drawing the anterior superior iliac spine, or ASIS. Make a small marking at where the inguinal ligament meets the right length and label it ASIS. Afterwards, mark the midpoint of the inguinal ligament, approximately 8 centimeters from the ASIS, and 1 cm above this point, draw a small circle about 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Label this the DIR, or deep inguinal ring. Using a penknife, carefully excise the circle. Now, mark a point 11.5 centimeters to the right of point B and label it B1. Draw a line diagonally joining B1 and A2. Where the diagonal line meets the fold at point B, draw 2 parallel columns. We want to do a left one in blue and a right one in red. The columns should be about 0.3 centimeters wide, horizontally spaced 0.3 centimeters from each other, and descend 2 centimeters below the inguinal ligament. Your measurements do not need to be exact, but should look something like this. Once you're done, label these vessels as the inferior epigastric vessel, or IEVs. Using the same color pen, draw 2 downwards and rightwards columns towards the base. They must be thicker than the IEVs. Label these as the external iliac vessels, or EIVs. Once you're done, you want to fill in the IEVs and EIVs with their respective outline colors. Now once you're done, draw a crescent directly left to the EIVs, as seen here, and label it as the femoral canal, or FC. Since it is a pseudospace, you do not need to excise this region out. Now take your colored paper, and measure a 21 by 4.5 centimeter section of this colored paper. Now, using a pen or marker, label it as the arcing fibers of the internal oblique and transversus abdominis. Once again, it's arcing fibers of internal oblique and transversus abdominis. Using a penknife or scissor, cut this out. And use tape to stick it underneath the region between points B and point C. Use tape to do this. Now, you're going to fold the tracing paper inwards on point B and then on point C, and carefully bring point D to point A to create a triangular cavity, as seen here. Now this demonstrates how the inguinal ligament forms the floor of the inguinal canal. Now observe where the pubic arch can be seen through the region between point C and point D, and trace the quadrant without extending beyond point D. You can gently flatten the sheet for assistance, but do not create an unwanted fold. Label this as the pubic arch. Draw a small circle about 1.5 centimeters in diameter directly left to the traced pubis arch, and label it as the superficial inguinal ring, or SIR. Using a penknife, once again, carefully excise the region. Now, measure a 10 by 9 centimeter section of colored paper, as seen here. Use a penknife or scissor to cut this region out, and label it as the internal oblique aponeurosis. Once again, internal oblique aponeurosis. Using tape, stick it underneath the rightmost region between point C and D, as seen here. On the region that's not backed by colored paper, label it as the external oblique aponeurosis. Afterwards, measure a 7.5 by 5 centimeter section of colored paper, and once again use a penknife or scissors to cut it out. Now, instead of labeling it first, we are going to trace the outline of the outer quadrant making up the original pubis arch at the regions between points A and B. Using scissors or a penknife, cut out the traced area. And reserve the remaining region. Label this as the conjoint tendon. Once again, conjoint tendon. Stick the remaining section, or conjoint tendon, underneath the leftmost region between points A and B, right above the pubic arch. Afterwards, you want to flip over the sheet, and the region between the diagonal line and the conjoint tendon, label it as the rectus abdominis. Rectus abdominis, as seen here. Now, for the region enclosed by the rectus abdominis, IEVs, and the inguinal ligament, label it as the Hesselbach's triangle. Once again, Hesselbach's triangle. Now take the red, blue, yellow, and white string into the deep inguinal ring and make it go out through the superficial inguinal ring. Optionally, you may also thread the long balloon through as above, with the nipple exiting out of the superficial inguinal ring. Now this represents a section of the small intestine and shows what happens during an indirect inguinal hernia. Now, we are going to refold the tracing paper as before. Make sure that the strings and balloon are in place. Make sure point D meets point A without exceeding it. And tape it over to finalize the structure. Now, on the plane where the bundle of strings exit the deep inguinal ring, extend the white string over the EIVs and tape it down. Label it as the vas deferens. Now, extend the red and blue string parallel to the EIVs and tape it down. Label this as the spermatic vessels. Now extend the yellow string towards the lower right corner, no need to be exact, and tape it down. Label this as the nerve. Now, the region enclosed by the vas deferens and the spermatic vessels is called the triangle of doom, whereas the region enclosed by the spermatic vessels and inguinal ligament is called the triangle of pain. The laparoscopic repair of the inguinal hernia involves retracting the hernia back into the abdominal cavity, then reinforcing the abdominal wall by using a mesh placed over the transversalis fascia. Now with that, our model is complete, and we do hope you enjoyed the final product. Thank you.